Every week, a new band. Brought to you by NZ On Air. Active Live! Yeah.
Kia ora koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai. You're here on radioactive.fm and you're here on Active Live, brought to you by our friends at NZ On Air. And today we are joined by local legends all the way from Ōtepoti. Today we have Richard Lee Hamilton, Julie Dunn, Josh Nichols and Angus McBride making up Asta Rangu. Kia ora team, thank you so much for joining us.
Kia ora, thanks for having us.
Oh, it's lovely to have you up here and welcome to Poneke. It's great to have you in our beautiful little city. You're about halfway through your tour now. How's it been for you guys so far?
It's been wonderful. Yeah, we started in Ōtepoti. We had a wonderful show down there with a lot of friends, and it's been a long time coming releasing this album, so it was a very cathartic and enjoyable experience. And we played up in Ōtautahi as well, played at the Dark Room, wonderful place that we played for many years. So yeah, it was lovely. And now we're up in the North Island, exploring the rest of the country, having a lovely time.
Lovely to have you here. And I can imagine it was beautiful playing this album and celebrating with your local Ōtepoti scene as well. Huge congratulations on the release of Entertainment, by the way. This album seems to be absolutely everywhere. It's on everyone's lips right now. Do you want to tell us a bit about how the album came to be? I know it was recorded sort of throughout the end of last year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. We started off recording in a new studio actually down in Dunedin called Te Korakora o Te Tui, which is the new University of Otago recording studio. So that was wonderful. And then we did the rest in our home on Bank Street, so where me, Julie, and Josh live. So it was wonderful, kind of very relaxed. We took about a month to do the rest of the tracking. But in terms of the songs, some of them have been around for about 5 years. Some I wrote when I was in the UK. So it's been a coming together of a long kind of period of time and playing with some of my oldest friends as well. So it feels like a lifetime coming together for this album. So yeah, it's been beautiful.
That's absolutely gorgeous. I'm very keen to talk more about that and because, you know, you're such a prolific songwriter, Richard. I'm very keen to chat more about how you decide what goes where and all that. But first off, shall we have a song?
Sounds wonderful. Okay, this first one is LLPLZA, which is the last single off the album.
Wonderful. beautiful. That was awesome. We've had that song on playlist for a wee while there, so it's really cool hearing it live for the first time. Thanks for that, team.
Wonderful, thank you.
Now, I wanted to chat about, we sort of touched on this before you played LLPLZA, but I wanted to talk about, because you've written for so many projects over the years, Richard, some that are some of my favourite New Zealand projects. I love Males. I love a lot of the work you've done. As a songwriter, how do you decide which songs fit where? Because there's different sentimentalities to the music you make, but there's also kind of a running theme in my mind, or a running, not genre, but idea. Can you talk us a bit about how you decide what goes where?
Sure. I would say, kind of starting from the end and working backwards, I think Asta Rangu is finally the point at which I think maybe those different sentiments or sounds or sonic soundscapes kind of like have come together. I think in the past we started with, I think one of the earliest bands I was in, Mr. Biscuits, which was kind of chaotic energy. But with Males, it was a lot more ordered, a lot more kind of power poppy, a lot more energetic. So there's always been an energy kind of component to it. I like the uplifting component, even if it is kind of dissonant or it's bright. But with Asta Rangu, it's the combination of that, I'd say, that chaotic energy, but with the order of what like a strong pop song underneath that chaos sounds like. So it's kind of a coming together of those things.
That's very cool. And I've noticed thematically you talk about chaos as a concept in your writing quite a bit, or when you're discussing your own writing, you talk about chaos quite a bit. Can you define what you mean by chaos?
Sure. I think it might be just the lack of control that we have. I think there's this illusion by which we try and live within the boxes we make, and we try to live by particular agreements or understandings that we have about how the world works. But a lot of things are unfair, and we get thrown curveballs, and I think that's just the general chaos of life. I know chaos sounds like a kind of like destructive, catastrophe, but I think chaos can be minimal as well. It can be little things that kind of trip you up. So there's the kind of the world that we try and build around ourselves, but then there's a chaos that always comes through. So I think that's what it is to exist. It was really encountering that chaos and finding or building the resilience to move through it.
That's really beautiful, and I really appreciate the sentiment there. I think talking about kind of utilizing chaos in that way, or using chaos, or figuring out the way through chaos, how do you find articulating that idea through your songwriting? Is that an easy process for you? Is it cathartic?
It's definitely cathartic. It's tricky because I think for some of these songs, I love the idea that there is a strong kind of pop structure that carries you through the song. But I love the idea that things drift in and out, and like maybe the chaos is pulling you in different directions. Maybe sometimes the lyric is at odds with what the soundscape is. So sometimes, the lyrics are kind of upbeat and optimistic, but the music is kind of gloomy. So it's the idea that, there's the tension kind of pulling in both directions. And I think it manifests in that sometimes the contrast between the music and the lyrics, but then sometimes things come together as well. So it's kind of a little bit of a roller coaster approach. And I guess having Julie here doing all the synth work brings in so much more mood and atmosphere. And I think that's what I love doing in this band, is creating something a bit more expansive. And I think that serves that idea of chaos so much more.
It definitely does, and expansive is such a good word, I think, to describe this recent album of yours, the Asta Rangu album you released. I think expansive, the sounds, and definitely I think, Julie, you're a big part of that, but these sorts of sounds and those expansive sounds really capture that chaos theme very well. I think it's really cool. How did you find, and as you sort of mentioned, you've been wrangling this down, and it's kind of a juxtaposition of the chaos and the order in this project. How do you find maintaining order in this project specifically?
I guess there's what comes back to I guess when there's like noisy elements and things that are kind of going a bit too haywire, maybe it feels like it doesn't bring in an audience or spectators to share in that as well. So it is that maybe that orderly sense of the pop structure that's underneath everything. I think that's how you kind of get grounded in that, and I think probably a huge part of that is having hooks, like having kind of like vocal hooks, and that's what I use all the time. Even that was something that was big that was in Males, that was having those kind of earworms that kind of get in. So you can have a song like one of our songs, CWT, which is pretty chaotic the whole way, but there's very much a very strong kind of like vocal line that's trying to bring you to the end of the song through everything. So sometimes it changes between the songs where the order sits, but yeah, I think having a really strong rhythm section brings the order as well, so everyone feels like that propulsion is kind of cradling them in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's something to be said, particularly for in a rhythm section, for creating chaos by having order. I think it's really, that by having those bare bones and foundations built up through your rhythm section, I think you can kind of build off that chaos so much more. And you do hear that live, which is cool.
Oh, glad to hear it.
So I wanted to chat a bit about both you, Richard, and you, Julie. You both run together Trace Untrace Records, which is such an iconic record label from Ōtepoti, where you have some of the most amazing musicians from, not even there, you've got Spectre Collective, for instance, who are from Wellington, a whole bunch of other cool bands as well. I wanted to ask how your label work influences your songwriting, because I can imagine that they kind of, there's a lot of crossover anyway with the people you represent and play with in bands. How do they affect each other?
What do you think, Julie?
I don't know. I've been thinking a lot recently about how, like, even though you might be the songwriter for your band, like, bands are just so much a product of the scene that you're in, and, like, obviously, like, the sound that influences you, but just, like, even socially, I think, like, other bands are so important, and that's something I've really found during COVID, is that, like, almost at times I've been like, oh my God, why am I even running a label? Like, I don't even care about this. But then you go to a gig that you maybe haven't been to a gig for months and months, and then you realize, oh my gosh, yes, like, this is why I'm doing it. So I feel like it's kind of maybe the why almost for your songwriting, and like, yeah, I just think it's kind of beautiful. Like, you create this big thing, but it's actually like, you get to the end of it and you release an album, and then you just want to thank everybody that you know in your scene, because it's like this beautiful, like, social product kind of. I don't know if you find that, Richard.
Oh, totally, yeah. And there's always something in the works as well. You're always aware of one of these other bands in the community that is making another album. So there's always something kind of on the move. So even if you yourself are not in a period of being inspired or making music yourself, then there's always something else that's kind of passing through, either being made on tape or being promoted or shared or celebrated by the label as well. So it's kind of this, I don't know, this kind of momentum that brings us all together, but also moves forward.
That's really beautiful. I do think that sentiment speaks to you both as community members, your community and your label, though, that you are so community driven in your label intentions. I think that's really beautiful, and half the reason why, well, not half the reason, but definitely part of the reason why there's such a beautiful, well-developed music scene in Dunedin. It's beautiful. Can we hear another song?
Yeah, sure.
Changing
thing.
up slightly.
Yeah,
Wonderful. What have we got next?
We have got Vic, which was the second single from the album.
Awesome.
Let's give this a quick.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that one, team. Now, I want to talk a bit about, speaking of Trace on Trace, about Bank Street. Now, Richard, you just mentioned that you, Julie, and Josh all lived together on Bank Street, which has been referenced in your album acknowledgements. Tell us a bit about recording and working on a recording in your own home with your flatmates. It's quite an intriguing wee combination there.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. I think I'm just trying to think of how many albums have been done there, because there was the I don't know. I know Bathysphere we recorded there in the hallway, and there's been recordings. I think Dale just did a recording that was in the other band room, like what we call it the band room. It's one of the spare rooms / gaming room. And so this one was done and tracked in my bedroom, which is a bit of a small, intimate space, pretty cold, and we've got a piano in there as well, which was used on some of it, even though it's a bit out of tune. So I know it's great because everyone living in the house is either a huge music enthusiast or is in a band. So it makes it acceptable to play the same guitar part for 2 hours in a row if you can't get it. But it's also amazing because I think there were moments like early on in the recording where the household or members of the household would stop in and sit on my bed, and we'd listen to some of the takes that we'd done, or sit in while we were doing some of the takes, and contribute here and there and give us feedback. So it makes it feel a lot more collaborative, like maybe a product of the family instead. And that's kind of how it feels with all of the recordings that can't come out of the house.
That's beautiful. And the use of the word family there is so poignant too, I think. It really is a testament to the kind of familial feeling that the Ōtepoti music scene has. It's really beautiful.
Definitely.
I'd love to chat to you about that because, Richard, in particular, your whole band, actually, all of you are such integral parts of the Ōtepoti music scene. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I'd love to talk to you as a steward of the scene and hear how you describe the current Dunedin sound or Ōtepoti sound, because it's such an iconic thought, and I think these days more than ever there's such a new, fresh wave of people. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure. I mean, I guess to start with, it's hard to speak from because we have a wonderful community around Trace on Trace, but there are that's just one subset of what's happening in Dunedin. There's the stuff that we old songs or friends, etc. that overlap, and hardcore stuff that goes on, and there's like bands that open for each other that are kind of like different genres and different groups. So there's always in Dunedin been a vibrancy or a sense of it's always been dynamic. There's kind of I remember Ian Henderson from Fishrider released a compilation called Temporary, which was kind of capturing the scene at the time, and that's kind of what it feels like. There's scenes that kind of pop out, and there's bands that go for a particular maybe a couple of years and then they kind of disappear or re-emerge like 5 years later with another group or something. So everything kind of seems like it's kind of swirling and members kind of like swapping in bands or starting new ones all over the place. I think it's very vibrant. I mean, there's difficulties, I'd say, in the Dunedin scene with venues. Sometimes sometimes it's feast, sometimes it's famine. It's difficult at the moment. We've got, I think it's just the Crown and Dive. There is Dog with Two Tails that has bark, but you've got to be pretty quiet there. So it's not a huge range at the moment, but like we used to have our own kind of space where we rehearsed and also had gigs on called The Attic, and that was like our own space, but we lost that a couple of years ago, and there's other spaces like Marlin Streaming had that they had a practice space, but they've lost that recently as well because I don't know, gentrification otherwise. So there's always be other initiatives that come along and find new spaces and find new places to play. So I think no doubt I've got optimism for the fact that will come out, or there'll be new things in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make, that these scenes are so the integral parts of the scene aren't just the people, it's the spaces too. It's really important having these community spaces and these spaces driven by these artistic endeavours. And that kind of sounds like what your flat is doing a wee bit, which is cool.
Yeah, it's like a microcosm of everything else that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that is absolutely awesome. And now speaking of Marlin's Dreaming, Dee Stevens from the band engineered this record along with Julie and Angus. I believe you both contributed here and there too. Can you tell us a bit about working with him for that one? Have you guys worked together before?
No. I think it was so I approached Dee because he had worked on an EP years ago by a band called Yeses that were, again, one of those short-lived things that happened. But it was a brilliant EP, and I think he might have been 16, 17 at the time, and he was the one who produced it. And it sounded amazing. I remember being very impressed at the time. And then when I heard he was back in Dunedin doing stuff, and obviously we met Marlin Streaming when we went on the first ever Asta shows with this lineup. So, but he's an incredible incredible musician, but he's just got such a good ear, very calm, very patient. He's definitely going places. Everything he touches turns to gold. So we've got other friends that are making albums with him as well. I think Phased on a Pony just made an album with D, and that should be coming out sometime soon. He is. I don't know. Superlatives. Yeah, I've got all the superlatives for D. He's an amazing human being. Yeah.
That is awesome. Oh, I have to keep my eye out for the Phased on a Pony release. That'll be cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And speaking of people that you're working with, I wanted to move to Angus for a little bit there, because Angus, you're not only the bass player in the band, you are also working on the design work. Would you mind coming on over and just telling us a little bit about how that went?
Hi. When Richard was putting together this lineup, he approached me not only as a musician but also just a managerial force, I guess. He knew that I couldn't help myself just sorting everything else out that was secondary to music. So the design and the artwork is certainly something that Richard and I have collaborated on since the beginning. It's been I really love attaching the artwork side to the music side really close and keeping those really close, because I think they're both sort of married. So that was a really cool. We must have produced like 30 or 40 album covers for this record, and then
Yeah, true. Yeah.
and then just in the last, when time was really pressing, we just found I found the photo of Dunedin from the early 1900s of Northeast Valley, which is where we live. I live just up the street, and the photo just happened to have the Bank Street house in it. In fact, you can see into Richard's window with 120 years difference. So that felt really special, I guess, to include that. And then, it just felt right from there.
That's amazing. I had no idea that it wasn't only the street, but the actual house.
Yeah, it's in the distance, but you can certainly make it out and peer in the window and see future Richard sitting there.
Oh, that is so cool. Future Richard sitting there recording on the out of tune piano.
Right, yeah.
Oh, that is so awesome. Well, and congratulations on the design work for the album too, because it
Thanks
is
very
absolutely beautiful. I can imagine it's really lovely working together as a group and not only creating musically, but being able to create the whole all-encompassing album. Do you know what I mean? All together. That's beautiful and speaks really well to the community spirit you guys really foster.
Yeah, I've always found it kind of a really cool thing to be able to keep everything in-house and just be, just do all the mediums. Like Richard and I edited all the music videos together as well. And it just means we don't have to sort of communicate the vision to anyone else because we already know it. So it's intuitive to us what we want. So then we can just get it done.
That is awesome. Yeah, intuitive is a really good way of putting it. I think the more you work, and obviously that speaks to you as creatives and you as a cohort and a unit, that you work together so well and you are able to foster that.
Yeah.
That's
It's
awesome.
DIY till we die.
That's it, you got to.
And then our kids will continue.
Yeah,
That sounds like mad Asta Rangu merch right there. That'd be sick. Oh, I love it. Hey, can we hear another song from you guys?
Yeah, sure thing. So this one's a little bit of a monster. There's two really long songs on Entertainment that are a bit of a journey. So this is the first one. It's called Better.
Awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much for that, team. And I'm sorry to say that is almost all the time we have, but I just wanted to ask before we go, is there any advice that you would pass on to young creators looking to get involved in the local scene?
Ooh.
There's a few of them around.
Yeah, great call. Go to gigs. And it's just it's never too soon to get out there and do it. Just talk to people, talk to venues, give it a try. You learn so much through going out there, and even if things don't go great, you make mistakes, you break gear, etc. You learn so much along the way. So it doesn't have to be perfect before you get out there. Just do it yourself, trust in the scene as well. There's a lot of people there that are willing to give you advice and support you. They went through the same thing, just like us. We have people that helped us out very much so through our time, and we're happy to help out, and there'll be generations forward. So yeah, speak out. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Hey, Richard, Julie, Josh, and Angus, thank you so much for joining us in studio today. This has been Asta Rangu. They're performing at San Fran, or they've just performed, I should say, as this will be going out on Friday. But they've performed at San Fran with Goya and Space Bats Tack, and then they're also performing tonight in Auckland. So if you're up in Tamaki Makaurau, then please go and check them out. But hey, thank you so much for joining us today here on Active Live. It's been lovely having you.
Kia ora. Thank you so much.
Active Live. Friday, 3:30. Every week a new band. In studio. Brought to you by NZ On Air.